I think where I want to start here is going through the process of taking off the power head. Now, I put this tool I made last time, I'm going to use it again, even though it's not perfect. But I think it's just going to be easier for me to work on the overall power head on the bench versus up here. So that's what we're going to do. And to get the power head off, really there's 3 critical pieces of the puzzle, and there's a 4th, which is a wild card for lack of a better word. One is you have to get these cowlings off. 2, you have to separate the shift shaft right up here. It's just simply a bolt with a pin. 3, obviously you have the bolts that hold the power head onto the tower. And then there's number 4, and number 4 we'll get to, but there's a nut after you get the cowling off up under this end of the motor that a lot of people will forget, and it'll cause a lot of grief. So I guess what I'm going to do is start with number 1. Of course, the other thing is fuel pump and fuel line. You do have to separate that, so that makes 5 things that you have to pay attention to. Let me go get a container. That's what you have right here. And I'm using an 8mm socket on these. I'm not sure they're truly metric, but it was one of those things that just seemed to fit, so I used it. You're not going to see it, but there's a screw right down in here I've got to get to. And there's one on this side as well. This one's pretty easy to get to. Now I do have a whole bunch of saw related projects, and I'm not sure how enthusiastically I'm going to go after those. I've got these in play right now and I kind of want to finish them, you know. They're loose. They're not hard at all to get. This is what they look like. Little screw head with a lock washer, star type lock washer. See it down in there? That's the one we got to get out. Then once we get that one out, those shrouds should be free. Now one of the things I kind of found out is all these darn screws are stainless steel, so when you drop them, they are going down and they are not coming back up unless you pick them up. You're not going to get them with a bag. So careful. There's one, there's more. See all that stuff that dropped out? Alright, that little screw right there was the other one for the regulator rectifier. And these are the 2 ones that I dropped down in there for the shroud. So I'll put them in there. I should have both shrouds free. And I do. Some other bits and pieces that came out, but for the most part I've got everything of importance, I think. Shrouds are off, and what that does is it exposes these main bolts plus that one nut up in here that I was talking about before. And then once I get the fuel line, the shift shaft, and those bolts out of there, that power head should come right off. Isn't that cool, the way that works? And you can see you've got 1, 2, 3. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll put them away now. I'll set this right down in here. We can get a little closer look at it maybe. It's that one right down there. See it? Right there. So once that comes out, and this fuel line right here is off, then I can take the bolts off and the power head should come up and out of there. That releases the shifter. Now I just have to release that line right there, that one. Let me see what else we got. Oh, we do have a couple more bolts to get out of. We've got this one right here. I don't know if you can see it. And then there's a corresponding one on the other side. Those are also required to release the motor. Releases it from this pan here. So let me see if I can get them out of there. One on each side. You know, as motors go, this is just really not that hard. Now, along with these bolts or screws, there's washers. Do not lose them. Yeah, I guess I got a couple here to take care of too. Oh, maybe not. No, I don't think I have to. I just think I have to get these right here. I think the other ones can stay right where they are. Okay. What you have on these is you've got the main washer, then you have the lock washer, and then they got this one that sits actually underneath. And there's a reason for it. It's really not a lock washer. It sits on top of the little steel tubing that goes through the rubber bushing. So that's the order they go, right like that. A detail. Oh, there's one more thing I have to take out of here. And that's a grounding wire. And I think I'm also going to release these two here so I can push up on the cowling to get to that really hard to get to piece. So, get some more. Not done. Thought I was done, but I'm not. Alright. You know, I think I had figured this out last time and I wish I had taken them and I didn't. And I worked around it. But they're easy to get out and obviously pretty easy to get back in. So I highly recommend doing this. And of course there's a grounding wire there that I have to remember. See how that came out with that washer underneath? And then another one over here. Running into. Just give me a little bit of clearance. I don't need much, but I need some. Now this is a 7/16 on this side, so let me go get a 7/16 wrench. Alright, now I can start taking the major bolts out. That gives me just a little bit of clearance to get underneath that one nut. I'm going to take that one nut off first because it's actually the hardest one to get to. So I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up or not. But up underneath there, it's a nut that comes off. So it's a threaded stud that goes through the tower. So that's what came off. You see that? And they came off of, I'm going to make a big deal of it, underneath there. That's where they came from. It's a stud that comes from the block through the tower housing. Must come off of there. Alright, now the rest of the stuff comes off a little easier. Bolts that come out of there. And that power head should be reasonably free. Now there's going to be a gasket to break, obviously. Alright, I've got that goofy thing hooked up on there. Let's see if we can get this to come off. There it goes. And there it is. Just a little tap and off it came. Now, I want to point something out. Do you see how that motor is oriented? It's actually hung exactly in the right position. Angle's proper relative to the drive shaft and everything. And that's why you hook onto here. I see guys hook onto this back here and then can't figure out how come it won't come off. You know what I'm saying? And it's just simply because that'll put a torque on the motor this way and it'll jam things up. It won't want to come off the shaft, and guys are beating on it where it's designed where the balance is just like this. And if I set it right back down, it would sit right back on that drive shaft nice and easy. Yeah, if anybody watches Street Outlaws, you know what that gal from Tennessee would be saying right now, right? Well, I'm going to tell you straight up. My God, there was a song, Straight Up. That if I can avoid lifting this thing, I will. And, you know? See if we can get this down in here. There it is. Okay, I guess it's time to start the disassembly process on this motor. A piece of marine plywood might help. Then another box to put all the screws and stuff into. Okay, there's that. I honestly don't see why I can't just use those gaskets again. So let's go after the starter motor next. Here's your starter motor. I think my fuel pump and carburetors will be next. I'm just going to leave all the lines intact. So the fuel pump, you got these two screws which basically hold it on. The Johnson Evinrude, they pulse through that line right there, which we're going to have to get. Off of the manifold, and I'm just going to leave it right with the carburetors. And the carburetors usually are just 1/2 inch nuts, and there really isn't an easy way of zipping them off. You pretty much have to do them like this, and I crack them all the way around first before I go in and zip them off. Like the motorcycle and the chainsaw world, where you get parts online matters. Sierra brand is a pretty good aftermarket brand, and places like marineengine.com, you know, they're legitimate outfits, you know. Some of the used parts places have just not been, I mean, to be expected, have not been what I think up to snuff in anybody's way of evaluating. I had one guy send me a wrong set of pistons, not knowing what the difference was in the different model years, and that created me some grief. There we go. Carburetors are off. Keep them right where they are. But if you look at these gaskets, they have kind of a wider distance between here, and I might just use these again. You know, I'm leaving those gaskets right on there in case I decide to use them again. Now I would prefer to work from the outsides in. We got this to take off, I guess, first. That should be fairly free. I may have to pry it off, but tap it off, but I wonder if I can salvage this gasket. There we go. Please be a busted reed. Nope, reed valves are fine. And I guess at this point I could probably take off the bottom of the motor.
And then when it started heading towards me, I started to see this scrawny ass fox go running, just kind of traipsing out from the car.
Yeah. A fox? And the cat was actually going to face down the fox?
Well, I don't know. She at least alerted me to him. I didn't know he was there. I'm behind the truck on the other side. So, that was a little startling.
Yeah. I think what's more startling is the fact that the cat thought it could face down that goofy thing. So okay. Well, I zipped off the cylinder head, and as you can tell, the cylinder head itself is actually quite clean. Everything is pretty good. On this particular motor, we're starting from a much, much better position than the last one. You know, I don't have a stripped out spark plug hole, and I don't have a broken piston. But when I get down in there, this one rocks terrible. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens when we pull off the other side of the motor. So what I think I'm going to do now is pull off this bottom half. But to start that project, I got to pull off this seal cap here first. Get as many as I can. There's a couple I can't, and I have to do it with. So the smaller head are on these braces. That's the message. I'm going to have to get in there with a socket wrench, I guess. Just before I get too far into it. Now I kind of zipped through the cylinder head with the wire looms. But on this right here on the intake, yet again, you have a wire loom on this right here. You see the motor mount right at the top, there's a wire loom. And on the side with the throttle, you've got these adjustment screws for the throttle and timing. Another wire loom up here. And again, this is for the fuel pump, mounting the fuel pump. And of course, this is another motor mount. And on the motor mounts, you've got these a little bit longer with that smaller head. Details. Details to document when you take it apart, and that's the whole theme of this video. Is you don't have to be a master mechanic, but you do have to be a little smart about keeping track of what you've done, especially when you're old like me. So wire loom from the top of the first cylinder, another wire loom. It's against my religion to pry at that, you know. What if it'll tap down? That looks beautiful in there. So let's see what we have for a crank. There's nothing in that that's making me nervous. What I'm going to do is, I was a little suspect of that piston in that hole, is I'm going to take that one first. I'm going to crack this and drop the piston out and just take a look. So here's the crankshaft bolts, and the bottom half I'm going to set them in this tub over here. Set this on top. I need one of these for each hole. So I'll make this for piston number 1, piston number 2, and I'm going to set these over here for piston number 3. So now we're down to pulling pistons one at a time. Makes me nervous when I don't see anything. You know, I've expected to see something by now based on the magnitude of that rattle. And right now the only thing I saw was, it felt to me like the bottom piston was a little bit loose in there. But so let's start with the bottom piston and just see what we have. I talked to this in the last video, is these are fractured caps. So you've got to keep the bearing and the caps pretty much together. They look alright, they're not the best. It looks like it had spent a little time on the dry side. But I don't think it's damaged. So this engine looks to me, from the look of that crank, got a little hot. So there was a time in its life it probably didn't have the right kind of lube. And well, it's not the best. It's not the end of the world. Nothing wrong with that piston. So I have yet to find why this thing has been clicking. A little bit of score. But that connecting rod's fine. This one too shows a little sign that it had run dry. It looks the same. Nothing wrong with that piston. It too looks like a little bit of wipe on it, like it was running lean. Just a little bit. They are on there. Third can. This one looks actually better than the other two. Ah, there you go. There's your rattle. This one's stuck. So, yeah, there's your rattle right there. So this motor actually had gone lean. And now let's see whether or not it's something we can salvage just by cleaning up the bore, or are we going to have to I don't like the sound of that either. I'm I'm thinking that one of the bearings might be gone. I think we found it. Yes, we did. So we're in for a set of pistons. Let me see if I can get the camera in here to show it. But this bore is, now that it's revealed, has been compromised pretty severely. Let me see if I can get a light down in there. You can see it. And if you look down there, there's a fairly significant amount of aluminum white on this, on that bore, and on the piston. So we have found the problem. So I guess what I need to do now is start buying parts, right? Found it. I think we have a video. So it's going to get a set of pistons and a overbore plus some bearings. So at least it doesn't have a cracked block, right? That'll give you a better look. And that's why it clicks. What a mess.